And then we get to the modern era, as I think of it, where we have actually fairly deeply interactive experiences in the browser. We've got data that's updating there. I can toggle around and show lots of different charts. There's loads updating, sparklines going on. I can look at lots of different equities. I can all sorts of different things. I can personalize this. If I'd had more time to hack together this demo, then we'd have been able to interact with that chart. We have orders. We can start to adjust those as we go. Everything that we might want to do on the desktop, we can now kind of do in the browser, which is fantastic. The thing is, though, we've kind of recreated the desktop experience we had 10, 15, possibly 20 years ago, but now we can do it in a browser. Go us. That's what we've achieved, right? There's a ubiquity to the browser and to the web that you don't get on the desktop, which is amazing. But we spent all this time kind of worrying about the constraints of the web. Like, what can we do? The number of times where projects have started and people go, oh, well, our backend spits out 1,000 data points a second. Can you render that in the browser? And I go, well, we can. But can you show me a human that can consume 1,000 updating points a second? So maybe that's not the right way to be thinking about it. Maybe we shouldn't be worrying about this technology so much. I mean, everything here is still this kind of pointy, clicky, keyboardy type of interaction. And maybe we should be thinking about different interactions with these systems rather than just worrying about technology constraints. And if you look sideways at other areas, other professions where they have to deal with lots of data at fast speed and make fast decisions, one thing that springs to mind to me is fighter pilots, because we'd all like to be a fighter pilot. But traders are a semblance of that, right? They have to deal with this. But imagine a fighter pilot that's sitting there in their Eurofighter Typhoon with a laptop, just sort of tapping away and clicking on stuff. That's not how you do it. They need to interact with that information in kind of more organic ways that ergonomically suit their intent. So, that's kind of the point I wanted to make, that we can do this. We need to open up our imagination for how we go about doing these and delivering these systems, because maybe the 20-year-old pointy, clicky, keyboardy approach is not quite right. So I've got a couple of prototypes, I think is the best way of putting it, to bring to life what I'm talking about. So the first thing, which is my lovely assistant here on the chair, is something which I picked up in a camera store, actually, but bizarrely I use it for music making. This is a consumer gear called Palette, and in true financial services fashion, it's modular. You have widgets and you can configure them however you want, which is how we have to do all the interactions. But this gives you kind of sliders and knobs and buttons in a way that a keyboard or a touchscreen never could. So, well, let's take a look at how that might play out on a trading system. So, I can start, if this works. There we go, it's always going to break, isn't it? Just refresh that, and go back here. Yeah, there we go. So now I can scrub up and down on lists. Well, that's exciting. Actually, that's genuinely is quite exciting. And I can hit these very, very satisfying buttons and bring up an order entry form. Now, this doesn't look that different to your typical order entry form, but now with these kind of controls, I can start to move things around. If they're working for me, there we go. So this chart on the right, something that we wouldn't typically show if we're using the mouse and the keyboard, because what you're kind of seeing is the volume and the price that I'm trying to enter this order in, and I can see where that sits in the market depth. And this is something a bit different to our typical entry system, and it's actually very expressive in the way I can use these sliders. And then again, satisfying clunk, and I can place my order. Hey. So that's something quite sort of touchy-feely and quite haptic and quite organic in its expression, and it potentially suits how you might do sort of hardcore trading and have to react to things quickly, because you can see a parallel to how you might fly a plane with this. But I wanted to take a step back and look at something different that kind of runs at a different pace. So let's just switch onto an iPad, which I have here. And if this works well, yeah, then you can see it too. The people at the front here will verify that this is my iPad. So what I'm going to do here is actually not build an iPad app, because that's boring. We all do that. That's what we run to. But what about actually making the iPad into a keyboard? So here, the JS Scrambler guys would have a field day if they could see the JavaScript that's running here. But no, not that. I don't want to rate you. Oh, it's always going to go wrong. There we go. Let's try again. So I'm going to scan this QR code, which is going to set my tablet up, if the network gods smile benevolently on me. Yes! With a WebRTC connection to that browser-based app. So there's no server here, right? This is communicating directly with my app. So now here I have a very different sort of interaction, right? This is very organic. It's kind of card-based kind of thing. And this is potentially my position. And I'm trying to keep tabs on my positions and explain it in the way I might on a notebook or something like that, but I can do it digitally here. So these prices will update in real time based on the app there. So here you can see me taking a gamble on the cloud beating the NASDAQ and outperforming it. Slightly different one. Here we go. Actually, if I highlight my positions here, now here's a cool thing. Here's the interactivity. So as I have positions here on my tablet and I have those in some conceptual relationship or I might annotate or something, well, they're highlighting in the table on my positions blotter at the bottom. So I can start to see the relationship between these two things, and I can still have my hardcore trading system down here on my desktop, on my laptop, whatever, but I can have something more organic for me to think or to take into a meeting with me here on the tablet. But no servers involved. So, right. So what? It's a good question. So I'm not trying to say that these are the right ideas. I'm not saying that these are brilliant, right? These have flaws that I know too many of, but also the biggest flaw is I haven't developed these with users in the context that your users might use them. So you're a far better place to do that, right? But I see so many of our clients, so many people like yourselves who ground all their projects in the history, how things have always been done. They don't challenge their users at all. I see them grounding it in sort of the technology constraints, so worrying about what's possible in the browser this week. Well, I'll tell you what, the browser is starting to outstrip our imaginations, right? You can do far more than you can dream up in the browser already. All that stuff I showed you there, all running JavaScript in the browser there, nothing more, right? So when you start a new project, open your mind up. If you're going to struggle to do that, engage with people like myself or others at Scott Logic who can help you open up your mind. But have a think about it, reset it, try something a little bit different, think about it a bit differently, and stop grounding yourselves in the technology. So, thank you very much for listening.